in the chemical and pharmaceutical industries and taught chemistry at Amherst College, Grand Valley State University, and Hope College before retiring in 2016. Fu has offered a variety of HASP courses, including Chinese calligraphy and kitchen chemistry. Dr. Fu.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Thank you for coming. It's a nice day today, and I think I have my entire class here. Supposed to be 18. I think we've got 17 of you. Oh, that's good. Now we have 18. Wonderful. I'm going to be talking about immigrants that had influenced our lives, especially the scientists that had changed a lot of the things we do in America. So therefore, I want to tell you, come on, we have more seats in the front. I'm going to talk about the immigrants that influenced America. Excuse me, I gotta have to shift around. Not only going to talk about the history of these immigrants, I'm going to do a little bit of geography as well. There's a map here of Europe. For those of you who not familiar with Europe, this is how it looked like. There's the boot, what's Italian live. That's the center of Europe. That's where the Romans started their civilization. And of course, here I have three colored flags to indicate the three individuals I'll be talking about. They're represented by the three colored flags. Early immigrants into the United States mostly were from Europe, because they are the one that discovered North America. And people like Andrew Carnegie, Albertus Van Rauti, you guys all heard of him. They came over here because of religious persecution in Europe and because of the opportunities in America, like the Carnegies. They knew that the future was in this country, so they came here to make money. So that's the beginning of immigration. America is a land of immigrants because we're all products of immigrants. Only person who are not immigrants are American natives. Anybody here is American natives? Please raise your hand. Very good. Glad to have somebody like that to help us. Diversity in this country is very important because of these immigrants make this country uniquely advantageous. They're the one that made us so much better as a country compared to other nations that exclude immigrants. Well, today's immigrants are non-Europeans. On TV, we see examples of these recent immigrants. Nikki Haley, the parents are from India. Elon Musk from South Africa, but he has a Russian father and a Canadian mother. And he immigrated to United States by the way of Canada because it was easier to get in. So he already recognized coming through from the southern border is not a good choice. People from Asia, South America, Africa, and Central America also have come into this country. Political instability, for example, the war during the 1930s and 40s, many educated Jews immigrants came to America. Among them were individuals like the following three. Leo Sternbach is the discoverer of Valium and Librium. For many of you who are familiar with that, those are the drugs that are called the housewife drugs for calming the women down. Edward Teller is called the father of the hydrogen bomb. The last one is Carl Dejerassi, is the father of the pill, the birth control pill. Now I'm going to tell you the story of what they did, and you be the judge how good they are. First, I'm going to start with Leo Sternbach. He was born in 1908 and died in 2005. And this is represented on the map. If you look at this European map, The red flag is showing where Leo Sternbach came from the three places he lived. This town here is called Apatzia. Apatzia is today is part of Croatia. But when Sternbach was young, it was part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. And when he was a teenager, it became Italian. So he was educated up here in Krakow. Then he went on to Switzerland to avoid the Nazi uprising at that time, and eventually came to the States. So I'm going to tell you about Leo Sternbach, what he did. 1908, he was born to a Hungarian mother and a Polish father in Abatzia in Austria-Hungary, and was annexed by Italy in 1918 after the World War I. Sorry, it's not World War II. After World War I, became part of. After World War II, it became Croatia. But before World War I, it was Italian, because after World War I, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire started to crumble, and many other nations rose up. Romania, and Hungary, and Austria, and Germany separated from the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. And the part Leo Sternbach lived, Apatzia, became part of Italy. His primary education was interrupted after World War I. When Apatzia was annexed by Italy, he earned his pharmacy degree from Krakow, which is Poland, and earned a doctorate degree shortly later. And his thesis is on azo dye synthesis. Later on, I'm going to show you something about azo dye, but let's continue on with his life. In 1937 to 41, and he lived in Switzerland and worked for Leopold Riziker, which is the 1939 Nobel Prize chemistry winner, who did a lot of research on sex hormones. This is male and female hormone for human. Leo married a Swiss woman by the name of Herta. He then worked for the Swiss company called Hoffmann La Roche. In 1941, he immigrated to New York City, worked for Hoffmann La Roche in Nutley, New Jersey. This is Kentrika Beach, Croatia. That's today. That's a picture of that. It's a photo by somebody on the internet, so I give her it's a pretty nice looking place. It's right along the Mediterranean Sea. Here I want to show you another interesting one, is the map of Holland. You guys heard of the street Anna line, haven't you? Oh, I don't have access to Google Maps. Sorry, I can't do it. But you guys know where it is. It's on the north side of Holland. There used to be a restaurant there called Peking House. Yeah, that is Anna line. And that street is indication of where BASF used to have a chemical plant there called Holland Colors, I think. They make azo dyes. So I'm sorry I will not be able to show you this. See if I can get back to. What did I do? Service not allowed. So I'm trying to back out, and I can't do any back out. Can somebody? There's on the bottom.
Wally, click, yeah,
Okay, got it. Yeah, we can just
click on the PowerPoint.
click on a PowerPoint. Now I can do it. Click on a PowerPoint. Allow me to do that.
No, that'll just allow you to continue with slides.
It did that again for me. Sorry, I won't be able to access that. Okay. 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 All right. Thank you. You know, ethnic and religious discrimination in Europe back in the 1918s is pretty bad. After World War I and the Versailles Treaty, which is an unfair treaty where the Germans got the short end of the stick, Sternbach's education was interrupted because he was living in the town that was formerly Austrian-Hungarian and now is Italian. So everything was taught in Italian, and he had a hard time getting his education completed. And he also faced discrimination with his job employment. His co-workers encouraged him to move to Switzerland, where he could have a better chance of advancing his career. In Switzerland, he worked for Risica, the 1939 chemistry Nobel Prize winner. And then he joined Hoffmann-La Roche as a chemist. Roche was very interested in his ability to analyze and make very interesting discovery of his work. And they sponsored him and his wife, Herta, who is Swiss, to immigrate to the United States. Before I go on further, I want to tell you about Herta. Herta is a Swiss citizen. So in Switzerland, back in those days, when a foreign person married a Swiss, if a Swiss is a male, the foreign person becomes a Swiss citizen. But if the Swiss is a female married an outsider, she had to give up her citizenship. So that's why she pretty much lost everything privileges she had. Very unfortunate. Sternbach worked at Krakow University in 1937. He stated is that at the time we were looking for a new azo dyes for interesting dye stuff intermediates, and we came across some substances known as 2,5-benzo-hep-1,2,6-oxazines. In the German literature, Sternbach would later write. He wrote that, and that was just his thesis. He was looking for something that was going to be turned into a dye, but it turned out to be a dud. It was not very good, not colorful, not like the blue and the red and the purple and those colorful things that can bind to fabric to make the azo dye for clothing. So early at Roche, when he came into the United States, he went to Clifton, New Jersey. I happened to interview at Clifton in 1975. I did not meet him, but I heard of him many times. In 1941 to 56, he was a senior chemist working at a bench, very much like what Frank Carney back there and myself did when we were at Park Davis, working as a bench chemist. He developed a commercial process to make biotin, recently discovered by Vincent de Vigneault, a 1958 Nobel Prize chemistry winner, on his discovery and synthesis of oxytocin and vasopressin. Oxytocin is same as pitocin, the labor-inducing injectable material for women in labor. So that you have a quick delivery because of contraction of the uterus, and you have milk let down, so you could have bonding with the child immediately. And de Vigneault's work later influenced me when I went to Park Davis, and I was working on the same products he had developed. Leo had a bad relationship with his boss, who stopped him from further research on his PhD thesis, which eventually resulted in the creation of Valium and Librium. The signer of Sternbach's commercial success during the 1960s, Arthur Sackler, of the famous House of Pain, got rich marketing the tranquilizers Librium and Valium. This is based on a quote from Patrick Keefe, The Empire of Pain, page 62. Sternbach's other achievements, and when he retired in 1973 as director of medical chemistry at Roche, but he continued as a consultant until 2003. In 1994, Roche reported 28% of its global sales was Sternbach's invention. And he was granted 241 US patents. Very prolific researcher. He and his wife, Hertha, crossed the Atlantic in 1941 and entered the US as immigrants. He had two sons. This is his personal life now. He had two sons, Michael and Daniel. Daniel followed his father's footsteps and earned a PhD from ETH, the Swiss would say, under Albert Eschenmoser. In the early 1980s, he was an assistant professor at Duke University. While I was there, I have met Daniel. I was with the company that brought him in as a consultant. Sternbach died in September of 28 in 2005 in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and he was 97 years old. So this guy had done some really interesting work. Some influence, especially among the, maybe your mother's age generation. Here is the references in case you're interested. By the way, if anybody would like that, email me, or if you like it, or I will just email everybody the copy of what I have here. The next speaker, the next immigrant I want to talk about is a little bit different. This is Edward Teller. Most of you have seen the movie Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer movie, I have not seen it. I heard that Edward Teller was portrayed as a very aggressive and devious person. But in real life, he was not quite like that. He's a very difficult person to work with, but he was not quite like that. He was called the father of hydrogen bomb, and he was portrayed in movies and documents that he betrayed Oppenheimer. His good friend Leo Szilard, Eugene Wigner, and John van Neumann were all childhood friends from Hungary, and they are the ones that eventually helped Einstein to convince FDR to start the nuclear program, which is the Manhattan Project. Teller's family is a wealthy family. Father was a successful attorney, and his mother was an accomplished pianist. Although he was raised as a Jew, but he was agnostic. But he was agnostic. And in 1928, he was injured by a streetcar in Munich while he was a graduate student. He wanted to run to the Alps to go hiking on a weekend, so he quickly hopped on the streetcar to catch a train, and he stepped off the streetcar before it stopped, and the train ran over his foot. His leg was severed pretty badly. He received his bachelor's degree in chemical engineering that same year. So he had a tragedy already at a young age, at 20. He went to the University of Leipzig and earned his PhD in physics under the famous German scientist Werner Heisenberg in 1930. So it was, and he taught at Gothenburg University till 33, and he moved briefly to England, to Copenhagen, working for Niels Bohr, which is a famous atomic scientist. He designed of the Bohr's atom and all this stuff that people in physics still talk about that today. Then he went back to England, and he met Augusta Maria Mitzi Haqqani, which is a sister of one of his friends. She was a Calvinist, and they got married in a Calvinist church. Now you want to look at the map here. This is Hungary. This is most of the intellectual Hungarians live in this area, and they immigrated to the United States. And Teller is one of those guys from this part of the world. And he moved around. He went to Leipzig. He went to England. He went to work for Niels Bohr. He was disappointed in England. His good friend Leo Szilard tried to persuade the British to start an atomic program. But the prominent scientist Ernest Rutherford rejected the idea and dismissed the atomic bomb concept as impractical and called it a moonshine. Many elite Hungarian physicists who were in England to avoid Hitler and the Nazis, immigrated to the United States and became key players in the Manhattan Project. Since Mitzi studied at Pittsburgh before she met Edward Teller, they immigrated to the United States and they lived in the DC area. Edward Teller was appointed professor of physics at George Washington University, and they were naturalized US citizens in 1941. He and his childhood friends, Leo Szilard, Hungarian Jew physics professor at Columbia, and Eugene Paul Wigner, another Hungarian Jew immigrant, Princeton University professor and 1963 Nobel Prize physics winner. They drove to Einstein's Long Island summer home in 1941 to have Einstein sign a letter to convince FDR to stop the Manhattan Project. So Edward Teller was only a minor player at that time. He was the driver of the car. The Manhattan Project. He was invited to join the Manhattan Project by Oppenheimer, but disappointed that Hans Bethe, a German immigrant and 1967 Physics Nobel Prize winner, was appointed by Robert Oppenheimer to lead the theoretical section of the Los Alamos laboratory. And Teller was not happy with that. Teller and Oppenheimer had similar upbringing. They're coming from affluent Jewish families, and they are very inquisitive, very intelligent people, and they frequently clashed. The distrust between the two eventually contributed to the betrayal and the downfall of Oppenheimer. The hydrogen bomb. Oh, by the way, Teller said the super bomb, kind of like Super Bowl. So he was the one that used that phrase. In 1949, the Soviet was rumored to have independently created the atomic bomb. Teller convinced President Truman to begin the hydrogen bomb program for the super bomb. By 1954, the US had set the hydrogen bomb test on various atolls in the Pacific Ocean. Later on, he would move on to Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. Teller was invited to UC Berkeley to assist Ernest Lawrence, another physics professor at Berkeley, Nobel Prize winner in '39, and he served as assistant and later director of the Livermore site until 1975. He advocated building more nuclear weapons as a deterrent against foreign enemies. He continued to teach and do research at Berkeley. He also went to UC Davis and started the nuclear physics program. So this guy is a tireless individual. I met him in 1971 when I was a graduate student. He came to speak at Marquette University, and the chairman of our department was worried that the demonstrator is going to stop him from entering the building. So they smuggled him into the building by driving to the front door to let him in. As he was getting out of the car because of this distinct feature, the demonstrators from inside the building saw that. They come rushing out of the building while the chairman hustled and with security guard with Teller went into the building, locked his car, left it in the front of the chemistry building. The demonstrator jumped on the car and started dancing on top of it. They left an impression on his car. Edward Teller also likes to play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Teller took piano lessons from a Hungarian office magistrate who lost his job when Austria-Hungarian Empire began to disintegrate. He learned theory, harmony, and enjoyed the experience of playing. His mother was an accomplished pianist, and he loved to listen to her play. At the Los Alamos site, while he worked during the Manhattan Project, he annoyed his neighbors by playing his piano late into the night. Now, I'm not sure I can click this site here to show you how he played the piano. Right? Do you think it's possible I can click? Be all right to do that? This is a YouTube. Is my browser up to date? Just want to play it. What happened here? Anyway. I can't even get to that. I'm not sure what's going on here, so I won't be able to show you that. But he played a Beethoven piece, but at a much faster pace than most people would play. And I thought when a Moonlight Sonata should be slow and even, and he was rushing through it. So I think he had maybe 2 or 3 strokes by that time. So, but he was still a very good player. So this is. I need to go back. Close that window, okay? Okay, I got it back. Okay, that's good. Thank you. All right. So now, since I can't play that, but you guys, if you want to get the my slides, you can go home and watch. There's like about 2 or 3 minutes of playing the piano. Here's a Hungarian government honored Edward Teller with a stamp. So the third person I want to talk about, here's the references of Edward Teller. So you can also check it out. This is where I get my information from. And then the third one I want to talk about, his name is Carl Dejerassi. Carl Dejerassi probably is one of the most intriguing individuals that I have ever met. Very interesting fellow. His father was he's called the father of the birth control pill because he worked for Syntax Corporation. They launched the pill in 1960. He invented and commercialized methylprene, which is an insect growth regulator. And he's a poet and a playwright. Now that really says something about this guy. Besides chemistry, he was into a lot of interesting things. Carl Dejerassi's early life, his parents were both medical doctors trained in Vienna back in that period of time in the 1920s. Vienna was the best medical college in the world at that time. His mother was from Austria and his father was from Bulgaria. They're both Jewish. His parents were divorced so that he could stay with his father in Bulgaria in order to attend the American college taught in English by Americans under the vigorous gymnasium curriculum. He was at that school for 2 years, and then he and his mother entered the US because they were using the Austrian quota to get into the United States. His father was from Bulgaria, and the quota was more restricted for Bulgarians. His father did join them 2 years later. When Carl and his mother landed in New York City on a boat, they took a taxi to the relative's home a few blocks away, and his mother had $20 in the pocket. The taxi driver took them for a ride. So he talked about that at one of my seminars I went to. He talked about his experience. It was in December when he arrived in New York, and he was a very outgoing person. He decided to approach an NYU professor about registering for classes. And the gentleman mistook his intention that said NYU would not take students in the middle of the year, and he could try to test another college, some community college. And so Carl played along with that and applied for a community college in New Jersey, and he was only 15 when he entered college. Then he wrote to Eleanor Roosevelt asking for financial support to attend college. Eleanor's aide wrote back and said, well, we'll help you get into a school called Takio College, which is now closed. It's in Missouri. So the following year, Carl went to Takio, because he thought might be a good school because Wallace Carruthers graduated from there. He was the inventor of nylon. He was actually at Harvard University when DuPont wanted to recruit him, brought him into DuPont Central Research, and he developed nylon and all the other type of polymers. But the Carruthers suffered from a mental illness of depression, and eventually committed suicide. He was at Tokyo for a short time. After a semester, he transferred to Kenyon College in Ohio. That's a very small school also at that time. It's 1940, probably 43 or 42 maybe. He started there. The chemistry department is small, only 2 faculty members. And he completed this degree in 2 years. And he lived in a Douglas House, which is a fraternity for the English majors. There were 9 English majors and 1 chemistry major in this fraternity. And Carl developed an appreciation for literature, prose, and poetry. So when he finished his degree, he found a job, of all places, in Ciba in New Jersey. And he was a junior chemist. And his first job was to do antihistamine research. After 1 year, he left Ciba to go to graduate school. He did some research to find out that University of Wisconsin and Harvard are the only 2 schools with doing research on human sex hormones. So he enrolled and received a PhD in 2 years at Wisconsin. So he was 20 when he got his PhD. He befriended W.S. Johnson, a pioneer in steroid chemistry. Johnson was a professor at Wisconsin at that time. Johnson got his bachelor's degree from Amherst College. By the way, I also taught at Amherst College. And I found in the provost office, there was a collection of student theses. W.S. Johnson, so I pulled out this Johnson's thesis, and he talked about steroids. He drew structures of steroids. That was 1951 or so, I think, when he was doing that. So this guy, W.S. Johnson, I call him White Shoe Johnson. He's quite an impressive scientist. So after Carl got his PhD, he returned to Ciba-Geigy, become a senior chemist. He said, oh, now I can go do my sex hormone research. But he was prevented to do steroid research, which is sex hormone, because this new field was reserved only for the Swiss chemist. So he didn't get to do that. So what he did is Syntax started calling. It's a small company. Now, there should be a totally different subject. I want to talk about Syntax later on, if you go on and hear the story about Syntax. It's a small Mexican pharmaceutical company created in 1949. They recruited him in 1949, but in 1944, there was an American eccentric scientist by the name of Russell Marker. He is a University of Pennsylvania graduate, and he was the one that developed the octane rating for the automobiles, you know, the octane 90, 68, whatever you have on the cars. He's the one that developed that word. And he went to Syntax and discovered that you take the Mexican yam roots and you extract from there, you got the steroid material that you can do some chemistry with it. You can convert it to cholesterol or steroid. So it was really interesting work. But Russell was a very eccentric person. When the company was doing all this work, and he went to Park Davis with a jar of steroid material, about 1 kilo. Back in 1945, you talk about $100,000 worth of material in there. And he took it to the research director of Park Davis in Detroit, set it on its table and said, this is steroids. You want to do some research on this? He was not a good salesman. And Park Davis used to hire him as a consultant. So Russell Marker got tossed out of his office. He could not sell the thought to Park Davis. So he went to Merck. And he did the same thing with Merck. And Merck said, why don't you talk to Park Davis? He said, I went to them, they won't listen to me. He said, if they want to listen to you, we don't want to listen to you either. So he could not find anybody to go with him as a partner. So now this company brought in a famous chemist from Switzerland, worked for Rizika. So it's a sex hormone expert. He worked for the Nobel Prize sex hormone expert. His name is Rosenkranz. There's another Jewish guy. Rosenkranz went from Cuba. He was immigrant from Geneva, Switzerland, to Cuba, and then from Cuba he went to Syntax in Mexico, and he wanted to figure out how this Russell market does his work. Couldn't figure that out. This guy kept his notebook in codes, and you can't read it. It's just everything is just coded. This only Russell market could figure out what's going on. So they hired Dejerassi to come in to help them decipher what's going on. And Dejerassi is a very, very bright man. So he followed around and see what the guy's doing, and he could figure out exactly what chemistry is happening. So he pretty much, with Rosenkranz and him, they figured out how this thing worked. So they got rid of and Russell market. And then, of course, Carl Dejerassi was a consultant. He was working down there, but very little money. When Ciba found out that he was going down to Mexico to work for an unknown company, he laughed at him and said, this is dumb. Why do you want to do this? Just because you want to do sex research, you're going to have to go to Mexico. So he stayed with them, and he was compensated in stock. So 1960 came along when they launched the first, female sex hormone for birth control. He became a multimillionaire. About the same time, the professor from Wisconsin, W.S. Johnson, was approached by Stanford University. They asked him to create the best chemistry department in the Pacific Coast at Stanford. So W.S. Johnson approached Carl Dejerassi and said, would you like to move to Palo Alto? And he said, yeah, he would consider that. So at that time, he was a professor at Wayne State. You guys know Wayne State now, good medical school. So he's at Wayne State. He did, they treated him well, and he really feels bad at leaving Wayne State because they're going to build him a chemistry building. But he got Stanford to build him a bigger one. And on top of that, W.S. Johnson also joined Stanford about a few months later. So after that, those two big powerhouses went, one from Wisconsin, one from Wayne State, went to California, and within a year, Stanford became a rival of Harvard in chemistry. He did quite a bit of work, 60 publications in 2 years while working at CIBA, working at Syntax. That's a lot of paper, 60 papers in 2 years. That means 30 a year. That's like every week and a half you put out a paper, write a piece of paper. Most of these are refereed papers. It's not something simple. You got to get approved by referees. Anyway, and after he went to California, Johnson joined Carl at Stanford soon after many big name chemists to join because of W.S. Johnson. He was a big name. Okay, in 1968, Carl founded Zocon Corporation, which specializes in insect hormones. Now he went from human hormones to insect hormones. They're very different. The human hormones is a steroid, which is ABCD ring with a spinach hanging off the side. But insect hormones is terpenes. There's C5, C10, C15. There's 5 units, 5 carbon units multiply of One is would be 5, 2 would be 10, and then if you have 3 joining, it would be 15. So this is what he used. And he had to teach the EPA and the FDA and all the government agencies that there is such a thing called LD50. LD stands for lethal dose 50%. That means at what concentration of your material that you can use, that 50% of the population will be dead. LD, lethal dose 50. They wanted him to set up a LD50 for his insect growth regulator. Turn out that these things are all made of hydrocarbon. So when the body breaks it down, it eventually becomes vinegar, and so just totally innocuous. So he could not even develop that. He eventually actually have to drown the insects in it before they can get that number. He left Syntax in the late 1960s, and Syntax was acquired by Hoffman Roche after that. And it's a totally different story after that. Djerassi's personal life, I can tell you something interesting. This guy, he has 3 wives. His first wife lasted about 6 years, and his second wife gave him 2 children, 1 daughter and 1 son. Personal tragedy in 1978, Pamela Djerassi, his daughter, a poet and a painter, died by suicide at the age of 28. Soon after, Carl Dejerassi visited Florence, Italy, with Stanford English professor Diane Middlebrook, later his 3rd wife, and tried to come to terms with his daughter's death. There, they considered the patronage that the Missidi family had given to artists in Renaissance Italy, and decided that extending similar support to contemporary women artists would be a meaningful way to honor Pamela's life and work. This is from Wikipedia. So he had a tragedy in his life as well. Carl Dejerassi, his publications, he had published over 600 scientific papers. Most of these deal with the synthesis of steroids, cholesterols, androgen, estrogen, insect growth regulators. And he wrote poetry, and he wrote plays, fictions, non-fictions, dramas, and plays. And 19 plays were translated into 20+ languages and 28 prints. So it's quite a prolific author. Here are some of the things he did. This is a structure. This is essentially estradiol or estrogen. It's got an alkyne and alcohol. It's got a ketone. You can see it here. It's got a double bound carbon. It's got a methyl group here. I think this one should also be a methyl group. It's not a hydrogen. So that tells you the postage stamps sometimes don't reproduce it properly. There's another one by, I think this is Austria, because he is from Austria and Bulgaria. So the 2 countries honor him. And this is the list of the references I used to summarize what he did. And you can look at this. And now let's go to the map and I'll tell you what happened. This is the map of Europe. England is up here, just part of it showing up. This is Denmark. This is France. Spain, Portugal, Italy. And then you have the other countries like Bulgaria, Croatia, and so forth. The first person that I'll talk about is from Abbasia, Leo Sternbach. He is from here, the ocean front view, a beautiful view, that's from here. And he went to school here, got his PhD in azochemistry, eventually become Valium, Librium. Didn't know that. He went to here to work for Risica for a year. Then he and his wife, Swiss wife, found a way to get to Portugal and took a boat from there to get to New York to immigrate. The second person is the yellow sign here. This is, no, the second person is Ever Teller, yeah. He's from Budapest. This is arrow for Budapest. So he grew up in Budapest, went to school, Leipzig, And then eventually he ended up in England, went to New School, and then came to the US. The third one, the Carl Dejerassi, his father is from here, his mother is from here, and they separated, and he went with his father to Sofia. That's where he went to the American college. Here we think college is college, but in Europe, this college is a prep school. Okay, so he was in prep school. Then he went on to school over here in Vienna. His mother came from there. Then he immigrated with his mother to the United States. I'm not sure how he got there, but I'm sure it's a boat somewhere. So those are the three people, what the life is like. And I'm open to questions. Yes. Wait a minute. Hang on a minute.
How old was Carl when he died?
Oh, you.
I forgot
okay.
what year he was born.
Okay,
23.
1923 and 2015, so we'll make him 92. Right, 92, he was 92. Yes. So most of these people lived into the 90s. So chemists will live to 90, that's pretty much accepted today. I look at the obituary, I say I'll probably die anywhere between now and 90. Yes, sir. There's a question over here.
Wally, of all the potential candidates you could have chosen, why did you pick these three?
Actually, I started picking many people because I was going to have a second session. And the second session is about more of a non-Jewish immigrants, more contemporary, more people who just been here for the last 30, 40 years. So I picked those three is because they came from a period of when Europe was in upheaval with Nazi Germany being so dominant and the Jews are being prosecuted, and intellectuals, especially the Jewish intellectuals of Hungary, all came to this country, and they contributed greatly to the success of the American economy. The Edward Teller is not the only one. There's hundreds of these people who came. To answer your question is, I don't know why I picked those three, but probably because I'm biased towards science.
Big part of so much being said today regarding so look at all kinds of values that they may or may not bring. Well, one of them is
Intellectual.
so curious as to the timing of this. There's so much on the news right now about immigrants, and what are the lessons learned for all of us? Whatever those lessons may be, but what are the lessons learned for us in how important immigrants have been to the intellectual development of the U.S. and all the patents that you have described.
Very true, very true. You are right on. In fact, when people ask me about immigrants, I always ask them, I said, are you an immigrant? And they say, no, I'm a second generation. So you're still a product of immigrants. So the only person that's not an immigrant would be an American native. Yeah. Yes.
David Couch says he wanted to contribute in the computer world. We celebrate John van Neumann, a Hungarian-born mathematician, physicist, computer scientist, polymath, instrumental in quantum physics, the Manhattan Project, and the father of one of the fundamental computer design concepts of all computer systems.
Very true. I didn't want to say anything more about John von Neumann. He's quite a polymath, and I understand he was a good friend of Edward Teller because they're all from Hungary. They all came from the Hungarian upper Jewish class, that are intellectuals. In fact, I heard that the John von Neumann's name came from, I think either his grandfather or his father was given the title as a noble, so they put the von in the name. Thank you. Dave. Is there any more questions? Yes,
A perspective on the effect of inventing Valium on medical culture.
on medical culture. I don't know how to address that one really. What do you have in mind?
Well, Valium became very popular in the late 1950s.
Yes.
You mentioned it for calming housewives down.
Yes,
And in my family medicine training, they taught me that a quarter of what all family doctors do is psychiatry.
yes.
And I had a lot of demands for Valium and Librium, things like that.
Interesting you talk about the Valium and Librium, but if you look at carefully at the molecule, that's a beta amino acid. Really, if you break it down, it will be beta amino acid. It's almost like recent invention called Neurontin, which
Yeah.
is a beta amino acid.
Another dangerous,
Gamma amino acid, yeah.
another dangerous thing is the combination of Librium or Valium and alcohol,
Yes,
which is very popular with some people for a while.
yes. Okay, Don,
I'm forgetting to remember who invented Versed. You know,
that I don't
it's an
remember.
acronym for very sedating, and when we used it, we sedated patients. It was a whole bunch more efficacious than Valium and other medications in combination.
A lot,
And that's the drug you ask for when you go to the hospital because it's good. It's got retrograde amnesia.
The generic name for that is Esmolol. And that
Esmolol.
came out when I was in surgical intensive care unit training, because it works very quickly and doesn't last too long.
I see.
No.
Well, fortunately, I don't do any of the drugs, even though I make drugs. Yes,
You mentioned aniline. What does a suco come from Holland suco color? Is that an acronym or a name?
that I don't know. That must be acronym.
As a kid, we would travel around Lake Makatawa. I would give tours and we'd go by Park Davis for what we call the tiny time capsules. And I didn't want to stop by Holland suco color because it turned our way different colors depending on what they're putting in the lake that time.
Yeah, well,
I think that Valium was known as Mother's Little Helper because
Yeah.
women were the ones that were hysterical.
yes,
And
I don't think postpartum blue was actually known at that time. Maybe.
I think in 1964, the Rolling Stones had a big hit, Mother's Little Helper. You've been there and you remember. Cool.
Yeah.
Valium.
But we have a question here.
Well, like I said, you had some others. Could you give us names of what they did, where they were from? Just very quickly. You said you had another hour.
I have other names.
Just names where they were from and what they did.
There is one person I would like to talk about in the next section, which I'm not going to be doing that until maybe next semester or next year. There's a guy by the name of Quinones. Yeah, he's a Mexican. In the 1970s, he was a teenager, I think 17 or 18. He came to the States as a wetback. Crossed Mexico in the California and ended up in Fresno, California. And he was a dishwasher. And he went to night school at the community college. He finished night school there, and then he decided to go on to college and got into UC Berkeley. And he was a very good student. And they sent him on to graduate school. I think he went to Harvard. And today he is the head of neuroscience or neurosurgery at the Rochester, the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. So that's one person I'd like to talk about. Another person I'd like to talk about, just remember she's called the queen of nuclear physics, this Chinese woman. In the 1930s, she came over to study physics and went to UC Berkeley, got a degree, and ended up a professor at Columbia. And she actually helped two Chinese professors at Princeton to decipher the problem they had, so that a few years later, these two Chinese guys got the Nobel Prize in physics, and she was not acknowledged. There are a lot of things like this in life, and that's what happened. Many times, people are ignored because they look different. People are slighted because they look different. And this Mexican guy turned out to be a good example of you can't just close the border and let them out, just keep them out. No, because this is a land of opportunity. These people come in here, really they're making contributions to our society.
I think one of the other things we tend to forget is the family tree that began with these individuals. And not just the impact they had, but the impact their students had, and those who were assistants under them. So it would be a fascinating study to look at the family tree and what would American science look like without that family tree?
Yeah.
Question.
That's it.
I'm curious what the term, you use the term wetback. I grew up with that, but I'm curious what that term means to others in this room.
Yeah, anybody could understand my interpretation? Yes.
I understand
Wait,
because
wait.
it refers. Excuse me. It refers primarily to the people coming up and crossing the Rio Grande River being wetbacks.
Yes. But they have to swim across the river to get here.
Any other thoughts?
Yes.
I had a great uncle who worked for the Immigration Service back in the 40s, and he was sent around to different places. But a lot of his work was done on the northern border in upstate New York and New England. And my guess is that the original idea of a wetback came from people swimming across the river to get into the northern part of our country to work in the lumber industry.
I see. Okay.
Another possibility is the combination of what makes a wetback and what makes a red neck. Working in sunshine without a shirt on.
Without a shirt on, yes.
Hard work.
Yeah. Yes, hard work, yes. Any other questions or comments? I'd like to thank you all for being here. And sorry, I won't be giving a second session, maybe next year, depending if I'm still alive. I'll be doing that. But it'll be something that I like to do with geography and history. Thank you.
Great job as always, Wally. Thank you.
Yes. I will get the distribution list from the office, and I will mail everybody a copy of this slides. Okay, thank you.
I have an uncle who worked at Lawrence Livermore, Los Alamos,
Uh-huh.
and I don't